From the Past to the Future, Conclusions and Projections from the First Part of the Course. AJ, one of the senior, as in older, students in Dr. Keller's online course, has just paid a visit to Dr. J in his home office to get acquainted and ask a few questions. AJ is saying, "Thank you for having me over, Dr. J. I appreciate it. It's good to get acquainted. I just have a few questions, and the first one is, how is the work that we've done so far in the course related to what's going to come next and during the latter part of the course?" It's nice to meet you, AJ, and thank you for your question. It's a good question. I think you'll find that there are very tight interconnections among all the parts of this course. For example, let's look ahead at the final assignment. You're going to be asked to create an instructional systems design model that can be used in an organization of your choice. If they already have a model, your task will be to think of some ways you can improve it. If they don't have a model, then you'll create a need, probably hypothetical, for them to create a training development department, and you will create the model that they would use in that department. You can begin your project based on some of the existing models, and then you can adapt and modify them to fit that situation. Therefore, the work you've already done on learning system theory and the characteristics of ISD models and the whole HPT concepts are directly related to the overall goal of the course, which is for you to be able to integrate all that knowledge into a useful process that can be adapted and applied in a specific context. This model, or the assignment for you to develop this model, is described at the very end of your module lesson guides. It's in Module 10 on pages 13 and 14. At this point in the course, you have a very good high-level overview of models and systems. In the remainder of the course, you will begin to learn detailed knowledge about each of the phases in the instructional systems design process. All of this knowledge will be integrated into your final model at the end of the class. Thank you, Dr. J. When I go home, I'll be sure to have a look at the guidelines for that final assignment, which are in Module 10, pages 13 and 14. What do I do if I have any questions? Well, AJ, you can send me an email, but it would be better to open a new thread in the online office and post your question there, because some other people might have the same question, or they might have had it if they had thought of it first. But in any case, it'll be good to establish a dialogue in that place. Now, you had another question? Thank you. Yes, I will use the online office if it is feasible for me. My next question concerns the models themselves. We learned a lot about models. We saw them, many examples of them in the Gustafson and Branch book, and there were a few in that chapter from Gagne, Wager, Golis, and Keller chapter that we read. But I still find myself a bit confused about all these different types of models. They differ so much in terms of level of specificity. Is there any other way to classify them? That's another good question, AJ, and the answer is yes. I usually classify models at 3 levels. The highest level is the generic level. The ADDIE model is a good example of it. It applies everywhere. But the fact that it applies everywhere is also one of its weaknesses. It's so generic that it doesn't apply with very much specific guidance anywhere. The second level is what I call the organizational models. These are much more detailed, and they're designed to fit the requirements of a given organization, using the vocabulary and the steps and sub-steps that they actually follow in that organization. You can see some examples of those in that chapter from Gagne, Wager, Golis, and Keller. The third level are operational models. These are like organizational models, but they have very detailed step-by-step procedures and worksheets to support each phase of the process. With these, you can use the worksheets to document your work. You fill them out, you describe what you've done, you report the results of your needs assessment, of the job task analysis, of the training analysis, and so forth. This documentation is very valuable when you're working in a team. For example, if a team member leaves and you have a new person join the project, They can read all the past documentation and come up to speed very quickly. Also, if later in the process you find you're having some problems, you can go back and review the documentation from earlier in the project to see exactly where you might want to make revisions. And of course, the archival data, after you put these documentation papers away, becomes very useful in the future when you do new projects. It can save you a lot of time to review the past records. Soon I'll prepare some examples of these models, both the organizational models and the operational models, or at least some excerpts from them, and put them on Blackboard. You might find these helpful to see some additional examples, especially the excerpts from some actual corporate working models that I'll provide when you have to develop your model. Well, I hope this has helped you. It was nice to meet you, and let's stay in touch. Thank you, Dr. J. I appreciate your help, and I certainly will stay in touch. See you next time. Bye. This concludes this brief orientation, and now I would suggest that you read Assignment 4, Process Model, Module 10, pages 13 and 14. Goodbye.